For those of you just tuning in, this is Tim Hortons steep tea. It is the most elite of the beverages at Tim Hortons.
I agree. Yeah. Even though they claim to make and brew coffee every, 15, 20 minutes?
Can't be, bro.
I still think that the tea is the way to go.
The tea is always the move.
Consistent. That is delicious every time. Welcome to the Shoot Your Shot podcast. I am Tim.
I am Lindsay.
We are professional photographers. We don't say professional. We are photographers, but we are professionals. Us. And this is the radio call-in show that is a podcast. You're listening either on your favorite podcasting app or you're watching us on YouTube. Both are acceptable as long as you leave a comment and a review and subscribe.
That's the only way. Here, lad. That's actually the entrance fee.
That's contractually you're obligated.
Yeah, you're actually literally obligated right now. This is the handshake. If you're listening still,
yes,
that means you have agreed to leave us a 5-star
review, comment, hit that bell, do all the things that you need to do to make sure we're showing up for you every week on Monday. Lindsay, I had a crazy hectic day.
Tell me.
So many errands had to be run.
Oh my gosh, really? What were you up to? Where'd you go? What'd you do?
Driving Kelly to work in the morning, and then I had to go.
You do that every day. You are
Not every day.
Many?
So, twice a week.
Oh, feels like every day in my life.
It's not.
2 days. Well, 2 days a week when you are also working multiple days. Yeah. I just think it's a delightful way to start your day as a couple.
Honestly, it's a lovely way for us to bond. Yeah. That makes sense. Like we get to chat.
I used to, obviously my parents would take me to school and that was always nice. Anyways, moving on. You did that. Then
I had to run and try to get my car detailed and cleaned, but that shop that I like to go to was just chaos this morning. So I just left. And then as I was leaving, I saw that they said no debit or credit, just cash. I'm like, well, that's perfect because I couldn't pay you anyway.
Have done that.
And then I went to, KW Surplus to get a bunch of camping supplies because I'm going camping tomorrow.
And shooting a camping wedding.
So
fun.
I had to get a bunch of bug spray and nets and stuff because I'm not sure what I'm going to run into.
It's going to be buggy.
Boogie.
May in Algonquin.
I got some DEET
You guys,
stuff.
The next time you see Tim, he's going to look like he had chicken pox. He's going to be covered in bug bites.
No, I'm not because I'm preparing myself.
You're right. Okay,
properly.
I'm proud of you.
And then I went to my folks' place to get a bunch of camping supplies and gears that we've been using for the past 20 years as a family.
I love
hope
that.
some of them work. I tried the inflatable mattress. It seems to work fine.
Do you need pots and pans and dishes?
I'm literally camping for one night and then the other 2 nights I'm in an Airbnb.
I don't plan on eating.
So I'm going to be fine. Also, I can stand lose miss a meal or two. But
that's so not true.
Listen,
but
we need to roll the Magic 8 Ball. And in light of errands. Oh, is it my turn?
I was going to say, you're going to roll it, but I think that we should ask it.
Oh, yeah.
Is Tim going to get eaten alive by mosquitoes in Northern Ontario this weekend?
Oh, come on, 8 Ball. Give me the love. Give me the love. My reply is no.
It's lying.
Wait. Come on. You can't.
You're right. The Magic 8 Ball's literally never lied to us before. Why would it lie today?
Why would it start today? Over there with our set that's growing, we got a Super 8 camera. We got a little X100 going on. If you do that, it's going to roll away. It does every time.
Listen,
you sure?
I
caught it twice.
Oh, perfect. Then keep your eyes out, babe.
Listen, we're a call-in show. First and foremost, we give advice. It's free. It's delightful. And it's the best you're going to find.
No. It's not free.
It costs reviews.
Yes, exactly.
And
Moving
your
on.
love and your subscription. Let's get to it. This is a bit of a longer one. David Perez Pictures. He's from Boston, I think, if I'm reading his Instagram correct. But it's a bit of a novel. I'll read it here.
Absolutely. David is not from Boston, but is currently living in Boston.
That's it. Okay. You know more than I do. Wow.
Well, I know David well because we did a mentorship session together because he bought my course.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
And David's a really interesting dude. Has relocated to Boston and is doing what many people have a hard time doing, which is starting over in a new place. Man. It's very impressive. Very impressive. But let's get to the question.
He doesn't get to that. He doesn't talk about that so much, but we should talk on that. That'd be a good subject to discuss. But here's David's remarks, questions, comments, ideas. Hey guys, loving the podcast so far. You two are getting more and more unhinged, and I'm here for it. Crying face emoji. Still catching up, so I'm not sure if this has been discussed. I started doing wedding films and picked up photography along the way, so I'm very aware of the pains that come with having a bossy photographer while doing video, or being a photographer and dealing with a disrespectful videographer. You two seem like a pleasure to work with. We are.
So nice.
But can't people just get along and understand each other's needs? I had a video gig last October and the photographer rolled her eyes at me constantly because I was in her way. She even rolled her eyes at me when she was in my way. She absolutely ruined my day.
This girl's just rolling her eyes.
And I still was very nice to her out of respect for the couple. I couldn't do my best because of her. White flag. David Perez Pictures on Instagram.
I couldn't do my best because of her is the saddest part of that whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, so to answer your question, David, we have talked about complicated relationships with other vendors on the podcast before.
Yes.
It won't have been the first time, and it certainly will not be the last time. So yeah, Tim and I have dealt with our fair share of experiences like this.
Yeah.
And it can be really tough.
It's difficult.
But at the end of the day, our goal is always for us to do our best work and for the video team to do their best work. But it can be hard when people hire the wrong people. And the people who to suit each other.
Yes, and maybe they don't communicate as well as they should.
Yeah.
Or maybe this vendor who you worked with, this photographer, has baggage, has like bad juju, along with working with a videographer who's just less than bueno, less than you. So.
Yeah, maybe they're coming into the wedding day with a preconceived notion of what you're up to and what you're gonna do. One thing that we've just recently worked with a really great video team.
That's right.
This past weekend. Yeah. DeLuca Films, if you're listening to this, shout out to Mike DeLuca. It was delightful to work with. And one thing that Mike did that I really liked was that he sent me just a quick Instagram message. I know you do this as well, Tim.
Yeah.
Leading up to the wedding to be like, hey, I'm Mike. Like, I'm, well aware that you shoot with videographers all the time. And just wanted to basically just break the ice so that our first time chatting is not going to be on the wedding day. Yeah. I'm sure it's mutually beneficial for him. So he can hear if I am, he doesn't know me, right? Yeah. He knows of me. He has seen me on Instagram. He doesn't know necessarily my workflow and my working style.
Yeah.
So if I was the kind of photographer that comes in with oh yeah, so I bring in all my own lighting and I have 3 assistants that are working for me on the wedding day. Yeah. And this is not me throwing shade at them. That's just not how I am. That's not that style operate. Isn't how I do things.
Yeah.
But if I was a videographer, I'd like to know that ahead of time.
For sure.
So that I can then say, hey, so are you going to set up lighting or am I going to set up lighting? Well, I was actually thinking of that because Michael set up some really beautiful lighting during the reception. And I was thinking, what would have happened if I came in with my own lighting and my own ideas of how I wanted it lit?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we would just have been human beings and have figured it out. But Tim, you have a very unique perspective on this. And I think David would like to hear this because you shoot both photo and video.
Yes.
Not necessarily at the same time, but you do what David has done, where you've come from a videography background, but you're also a very talented photographer. What would you say to a videographer or what would you say to somebody who's dealing with a bossy counterpart?
It's really interesting because I, like you, David, and DeLuca Films, I try to reach out to whoever I'm working with, whether it's a photographer or videographer on the day, and say, hey, this is me, this is my style, this is my approach, this is what you can kind of expect. End of the day, I focus on the idea that I really want the couple to have a really good experience and really good visuals, whether it's photo or video from either of us. That's the goal. That's my thesis statement of the day. And I try to hit that home every time just because you can't really argue with that. It's like an I statement, right? It's I feel this way, therefore, how are you going to be mad at me or angry with me or argue with me for an I statement? But
it's a fact.
It's a fact. They're going to have
This is my goal is.
I want them to have a great experience. And I don't want us to sacrifice images
from either of us.
For either of our ideas or egos. We can work together. I've worked with photographers before who are a bit more bossy. I've worked with videographers who are a bit more elbows up, very cinematic, so to speak. And you just have to kind of adapt. And I think a lot of it has to come down to communication. So I know this isn't really, an advice question. You're just kind of sharing your experience, which totally sucked because you can't do anything about that. You just have to kind of, I guess, roll with it. But in these instances where I'm feeling like I'm competing with another vendor, it comes down to communication and just speaking what I need.
Also, sometimes it comes down to being okay, I can clearly see that we're not on the same page. Yeah. I'm just going to start being really vocal about what I need now.
Yeah. Before we move on,
I'm going to start telling you for the next one, I need you to shoot on a 24-70 instead of that, whatever. You know what I mean? You start saying what you need and they do or they don't do it. Yeah. But
I'll stand next to the photographer and say, hey, do you mind if I do something after this? Because usually, and this is typical, and maybe it's not the most common, but for me, my experience, typically it's the photographer who kind of takes the reins and the lead on the day. And that's the way that I like to function when doing video. I find that video is a lot better for my couples and for my brand when I'm taking a very fly on the wall approach, and my couples kind of forget that I'm there.
Yeah.
That's when I get the good stuff. That's when like the beautiful parts of the day kind of come out in video, as opposed to like having them stare at the camera and like do like that weird like.
Oh, it's too much for me.
It's too much for anyone. It's also not authentic to most couples.
No.
It's weird. It's fine for photos, but for video, I feel like it doesn't really translate to storytelling of the day. It kind of breaks that fourth wall. And I want to make sure that we keep that fourth wall up and present at all times for the most part. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if it's down to like needing to stand my ground, it'll be a case of during portraits, I'll be like, hey, after this one, do you mind if I do something? And then they'll usually say yes. Mm-hmm. If they say no, I'm just going to, it never happened. I've never had someone say no to me. I've never been denied by a photographer or another vendor of any requests I've had.
I wonder how many people think that I've been the bossy photographer, just thinking about it now. Okay. Because I am usually the one directing, like you said, right? Well, you've worked with me.
Yeah.
I will say 100% of the time I take the reins, and then I try to go, did you need anything?
Yeah. And you're good about that.
Do you need anything here? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I will just move on because I'm cognizant of the timeline and I'm being self-centered and I'm like, are we moving on? Like, and I'll just go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And then you'll be great at being like, oh, actually, can I just jump in here for a few seconds? And then I'm like, oh, by all means.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I think that stems from an idea that we just want to keep our couples moving. And maybe, David, that's what this photographer was focusing on. She just wanted to keep the day moving. And also, maybe she fucking sucks at scheduling and she was behind herself and she bit off more than she could chew. So I hope you don't feel too bad about this.
If you guys were both in each other's shots a lot, here's an interesting thing, okay?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've learned a lot from you, and I think we've learned a lot from each other on how to try to stay out of each other's way.
Yes.
We still fail at it. We work together literally every day in some capacity or another, and we still end up getting in each other's shots. I still get in the way of the video, whether it's you or somebody else. It's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Our clients understand that they've hired at sometimes 4 people to document their wedding.
Exactly.
We're going to be in each other's shots at times. It's going to happen
every now and then. Yeah.
So sometimes it's a matter of like, I will at the beginning of a wedding day, especially if I'm working with somebody new, say, if I'm ever in your way, like give me a poke, say Lindsay. Yeah. Michael did that this weekend during Sparklers.
Okay.
Because it was a very chaotic start to
Gosh,
Sparklers.
it was wild.
Sparklers is always funny because the couple and all their friends and family are already drunk, right? They're well on their way to getting litty. And I love that for them. However, it can lead to chaos. There's never enough lighters.
Yep.
People are like, can we go back inside? I want to go where the bar is. I want to drink. I want to get going.
Yeah.
So people start lighting lighters before they should. I also am aware of how long a sparkler will take.
Even the tall boy, the big boys.
Right?
Yeah.
We have a pretty long window, honestly, for photo.
Yeah.
For me to get what I need on a long sparkler. I then have to be thinking about how much time do we have on a long sparkler for both photo and video.
Yeah.
Knowing that Mike was right out in the open earlier and said he's not shooting on like a gimbal or whatever, so he doesn't want to do anything super handheld. So he wanted to stay on static for a lot of the shots throughout the day. So I started making decisions on my lens choice with that in mind, right? Because he gave me that info. But it was a really chaotic start to the sparklers all getting lit.
Okay.
And I knew that he wasn't going to run in. So we had the couple set up on aisles. Like they were there were chopsticks of guests, okay, parallel lines of guests lined up on either side, and then we were going to have them run through like a tunnel.
Yes.
My goal is usually to run through a few feet ahead of them, like you would for a recessional or whatever at a wedding.
Yeah. Like throwing rice, but they're not.
Yeah, but Mike is at the end, right?
Mike and Owen, his second, were off to like the corners. I know this because I realized how tight of the frame this was, and so I literally just held one of their tripods with the light above. Like you were just like, I'm getting out of this situation. I'm not going to be. You know yeah. Lindsay's good. I don't need to second shoot this. So I'll maybe help out the team instead, which was so nice of you. Yeah.
But I knew for a fact that the first shot that I was going to do, I was going to be right in the middle of their photos because I needed the shot of me running down backwards facing them.
Absolutely.
But then when I got to the very end of it, I thought that Michael was beside me, but he was still a few feet back.
Yeah.
And he was like, Lindsay. And I turned around and I was like, oh, you're still feet behind me. And I am still, my big head is right in the way of your shot.
Yeah.
And we were all good.
Yeah.
And I even checked in with him after, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. Was I really in your shot there? Because I looked and I knew that I had gotten most of what I needed. I shot again after I knew he got what he needed.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, we were good. And maybe he's going to hear this and he's going to be like, absolutely, we were not good. I hate that girl.
You saw
so
the thing
much.
I posted? There's nothing in there.
Yeah. Did you see sparklers in there, Lindsay?
I think a lot of it comes down to like approach too. Like some videographers will have, and this happened all day, and I think the couple was chill with it because that was kind of discussed beforehand, like doing things multiple times. I don't like to do that so much when it comes to portraits.
Sure.
Because it just makes me, it's a psychological thing where I think couples are like, oh, we're doing this twice. Do I have to do everything twice? Did he miss the kiss? Do we have to do that again? Like, I don't want my couples to ever think that we're doing things again because I missed it. Not necessarily because I want to get the best angle, because there's a photo team and a video team, and I want to make sure we take turns. Like, if I can capture over your shoulder or to the right of you or like a 90-degree angle doing video, I'll do that because it's just a better experience.
Sure.
Let's not repeat things. Let's keep the day flowing.
But you're more comfortable with being really close to me. Because we're friends. So maybe Mike didn't want to like be the guy with his tripod on my shoulder. So he's staying off to the side and then he's going to do
it was very respectful, but I just don't want, I just feel like it's one of those things where if you can do things twice and the couple's chill with it and it doesn't really hurt your workflow, then maybe do that. And then this photographer wouldn't have been such a bee,
Yeah. I am curious. We should phone a friend. We should literally call Mike on the phone right now and be like, hey, Michael, did you feel like I was bossy? No, let's not do that.
There's not enough listening and watching. Please let us know.
There's not enough therapy in the world for me to hear that answer, unfortunately.
I don't want to hear it. No, he was loving you. I think he really had a good experience.
The goal is always for videographers to leave liking us, but it's so funny.
Yeah.
I've said this to you in the past, Tim. It doesn't matter how good of a working relationship I think that we're having. By the end of the day, I always assume the video guy hated me.
Yeah.
Always. I always assume it. And then usually I find out later when they're still messaging me and being like, hey, thanks for the referral, whatever, like, oh, we're good.
We're chill.
But it's a really tough dance to dance.
It is. It's difficult. And, I appreciate you.
If you ever find an answer, David,
let
us know.
Please keep the questions coming. Keep the ideas coming. Like, this is good stuff. I'm happy.
But somebody rolling their eyes at you, what I will say to that is when you start to realize this person just straight up sucks.
Yeah.
Just stop speaking to them. Yeah. That's my just general thing.
Go about the day as if they're not there.
I'm going to literally not engage with this person anymore. I will still do the respectful thing. Did you get what you needed? Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to sit down and have dinner with you.
I can be your buddy.
We are not going to have any level of camaraderie anymore.
Don't try and make a joke at dinner with us if you're going to be a dick during the portrait session.
If you're not trying to make my client's wedding photo and video experience as a whole good, I'm out entirely.
Yeah. I had an opposite experience.
Because you also want to separate yourself from them. You don't want your clients to think that you're anywhere near this crappy person.
No, you want to make sure that you're making that divided line very apparent to everyone. Even the guests, just be like, oh, I'm not.
We're not.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. No,
drone boy, not near him.
Couldn't be me. I had a very opposite experience of this, and we should, before we move on to that, I want to make sure that we touch on some of the positive things of working with a video team.
Please.
The lighting was fantastic all day long.
Did I say that I set up lighting? It was gorgeous.
Yeah, but I think we should touch more on that.
I think we should touch more on it to the point that literally today I was asking Tim, hey, do you remember what lights those were? Because
yes,
I want to personally buy some of them because they lit the reception space so beautifully. For speeches. I didn't put a flash on.
Yeah.
I didn't have a flash on for their first dance because they lit it so beautifully. And they were asking for feedback, but also I think he was quite confident in what he was doing. So he was just basically saying like, are you good with this? And I was fine. Like 1000%. Like,
go for it.
You just made this look movie level production.
I've had that from
which
photographers
was
too.
So delightful.
Using the same light. Like photographers like, oh, I love that you backlit the dance. I'm like, yeah, happy you feel that way because I needed to because it's a cave in here.
Yeah.
They were fantastic for that. They were good at communication. They were good at, making sure that we arranged ourselves well during the ceremony. There was no overlap. They kind of described what they were doing in terms of like where they'd be during the processional, during the recessional, during the kiss, signing, all that stuff. Like they were professional, and they wore those little tiny headsets that gamers wear, which is very cute.
We need to touch on that.
And I could never.
No, we need to touch on that right now.
I like the idea of it, but I think
so. They wore headsets with a microphone and an earpiece.
Yes.
And this is like getting into the Michael DeLuca production. I really hope that he's listening to this and it's like feeling like, holy shit, I'm awesome.
Feel seen.
We saw them put these on. And first of all, I had to make a little Britney Spears joke. You can't see a person wearing a headset while working and not make a Britney Spears joke.
Yeah.
However, the communication between the two videographers was phenomenal.
It was beautiful.
They were never yelling.
No.
They never seemed panicked or rushed.
No.
Whenever someone needed something, they were already on it.
Yeah.
They were really, really solid in that way, because there's also a sense between video teams when they're panicked that really can make for an icky vibe for everyone on the production end of things that are working.
Sweaty dudes in their 20s panicking over something is not a good look.
This is like freaking me out. Why are you guys all stressed? I'm like, do you need a memory card? Do you need a battery? Do you need a hug? Like, what's going on here, right? But these guys, confident,
they were very calm,
cool.
Yeah.
The headsets, I think, really. I do want to look into like an in-ear monitor, like something like we
these
wear
would be ideal,
for the podcast.
Yeah.
I think video can get away with wearing a bigger headset because people don't have to speak to them quite as much, but people are constantly speaking to us.
Yeah, true.
So
also, I will say that even though it looks crazy and like you're at a gamer convention, you mentioned it, calm, cool communication throughout the day. And then I asked at the end during Sparklers, I'm like, so like how much of talking to Mike because we had time to set up, like, so I'm like, how much of like communication between you and Owen, your second, is you guys just like fucking around and just making jokes and memes? He says like
just
50,
singing to each other.
50%. I'm like, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So not only do they get to feel connected and like creative on the day, but they get to actually like hang out with each other, even though they're in different places throughout the day, and like just shoot the shit. And that's such a calmer, more environment.
They are in really different, those things actually worked really well because we were out at family photos.
Yeah.
And I had told Mike, I'm going out to shoot family photos. Like, do you need to shoot that? Like, I don't know. Some videographers don't shoot families at all.
Yeah.
And he was sort of like noted, and then I saw him talking to his mic, and he was telling Owen that we were going out to do family photos, and then I overheard Owen saying, do you want me, I think he was asking like, do you want like a wide shot of all of these family groupings, or do you want like tight candids? Like, what are you looking for? So he could even be engaging with him and asking specific questions,
making questions
without having to run all the way back inside the venue, go and find him while he's in the middle of setting up. He can just ask a quick question. So from a production side of things, it was very seamless,
especially
really
for candid stuff like that, like completely off the cuff, like, oh, that would be good, maybe we'll get that, maybe there's something really special, maybe grandma's only here for 20 minutes, like let's make sure we get that, you know? So I'm kind of a convert. I still won't wear them because I typically work alone, and having a communication with myself is
a bit
all
weird
up here. But
Tim's personal podcast.
All up here. Just talk to myself all day. I talk to myself out loud enough. I don't think I need to include
it's
a
honestly
microphone.
Spooky how much you speak to yourself.
Wild.
I will think that I'm being spoken to. I'll be sitting at our desk and I think I'm being spoken to. It's just this like really horrific mumbling. It's just like,
it's mostly towards Adobe or like any other software program that just fails me, you know?
And I'm like, oh, was I a part of that experience? Because I wasn't listening if I was. And if I wasn't, why are you speaking like an absolute Looney Tune right now? Very creepy.
That's how I get my frustrations
That's
out.
Okay, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, big shout out to all the videographers we've ever worked with that are gems. We love you all, even if I do think that you hate me at the end of the day. I don't think there's a perfect answer here, except for work with people that you enjoy and refer those people to your couples so that you don't have to work with jerks.
Absolutely.
Try to make your clients hire people that have similar working styles so that you're not constantly fighting a losing battle.
I would say not similar, but complementary. That's more important.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
this is the last story I'll tell. I think we don't have time for
it.
This question, this episode. But I worked with a photography team on maybe earlier this month, and we both communicated on Instagram like, hey, I'm super low key, super chill. That's how I'd like to capture things. Looking forward to it. Standard message.
Yeah.
She replied with the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we're both low key, chill people. Great. I thought, great. The day came.
You goofed.
And I feel like her level of low key chill was so low key chill.
She was the videographer.
That she was taking the videography role, and I had to do a lot of directing for portraits. And I'm like, well, it's not my job. And it came down to the point where they were trying to flip a room to do a rehearsal for the next couple that evening. And we had like 10 minutes to do 20 photos. And I was like, well, this isn't necessarily my role at all. I'm literally done packing up, waiting to do portraits with the wedding party. And the vendor, the concierge is like, hey, what are we doing for photos? I'm like, hey, that's not my job.
But see, now
so
I
had
have
to
questions.
help. I had to step in and move chairs and help. Like I was happy to do it, but at the same time, it's like, shouldn't you have this covered in a way? Why am I the one directing the photo portion of the day?
I have questions though.
Please ask.
Was this photographer doing one of those like, I don't pose my couples things? Where, you know, and I think it's a lot more common in a less experienced photographer that they're trying to get a really candid and undone thing. But what people do not realize is that candid and undone requires some level of direction.
Yes.
It requires some level, because otherwise what you get is your clients are just
looking
stare at the camera, looking
so
confused, right?
And that's what a lot of these photos were, I fear.
Yeah.
I had to do some directing in terms of like wedding party. Even the bride, I could tell, was getting a bit frustrated, being like, what are we doing now? What are we supposed to be doing?
They want some direction, right?
So,
like, even if you are that undone photographer. But the thing that I think would really throw it off, and we've talked about this before, is if I have given a cue, or I believe in my mind I've given a cue, and the videographer or second photographer jumps in with their own cue that undermines
while you're shooting, while you're doing yours,
undermines what I've done.
Right.
Like, I'm picturing this photographer thinking they're getting this like nice candid moment, and then Tim being like, can you guys just go and do this thing? Which I don't think is what happened, but this is what I'm picturing. And her being like, what the heck? I was getting this thing. My assumption is probably in this scenario that she wanted that candid cinematic style, but didn't know how to cue it. It's not how to pose it, but how to cue something like that.
Right.
You have to cue movement. You have to cue hey, I want you guys to pretend like you're the only people in this room, and I want you to do your first dance.
Yeah.
Whatever, right? And then
that's a great cue.
And then maybe look at the video team and be like,
shut your mouth.
Like, leave this for a minute. I need to see how this is going to go. I need some space.
It wasn't that. It was bride and groom and wedding party being like, what do we do now? And then photography
like wedding party undone is just absolutely chaos.
I don't know. And then they have a concierge saying, we need to be out of here in 5 minutes. And then I'm like, okay. And
they just ran out of things. There
was a cloud of confusion and not understanding what to do next. And I was like, okay, cool. So I feel like I had to jump in, and I was thanked later by the photographer, course. Which is great. But I'm like, why don't you have this?
Yeah, I don't doubt that. But there definitely needs to be some, I think, expectation of roles on, and it's usually the photographer is the person. And if you're the photographer that's like, hey, listen, I'm terrible at posing, I have no clue what I'm doing, let me know, can you throw me a bone here? Or like, hey, my brain is just not really functioning right now, I'm exhausted, I'm coming off of whatever,
can you take over for the next 5 minutes?
Do you mind? Like, and that will happen. Usually I don't shoot it over to the videographer, but I might shoot it over to the second and be like, Tim, do you want to do anything right now?
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh yeah, like let me pose you up a couple of times just so that I can like give my brain a chance to like
take some breaths.
Look at maybe the photo list. Yeah. Look at our schedule. Just regroup a little bit.
Centered.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it always comes down to communication. But if you communicate to the photographer that you need them to do more and they still don't, that's not good.
Maybe they should have hired a different photographer. You know, maybe that wasn't the right fit for that couple.
Maybe I was available, didn't get hired, didn't get the call.
I'll say. Kind of disappointing. Lindsay, great work today. We've done another episode 13.
Episode, lucky number 13. Yeah, so. She's a little bit of a brief one today, my friends. Yes. It's because Tim and I are busy little bees working away on our hive. So we have to go clickety-clack on the computer, and we will see you guys next Monday. Thank you so much for being here.
Ciao, Bella.